that during the grey listing period, we have had new licensees who wanted to come to the jurisdiction. And one would hope if anybody's sitting on the sidelines deciding whether Gibraltar is a jurisdiction in which they want to conduct a business, then obviously coming off the grey list may help them make up their minds about that. So overall, there have been some issues in the early part around payment provision, for example, but the industry is very adept at working around these issues. And I think we're in a position where if we hadn't come off the grey list when we did, then the issue may have been more exaggerated. We would have felt it more. But I think coming off in the timeframes that we have, I don't think it's adversely affected the industry here. And I think now we're off the grey list, there's an opportunity for more inwards investment.
Now, one of the reasons for our grey listing in the first place was regulatory bodies not levying sufficient fines. Nigel Feetham actually mentioned that the gaming regulator, yourselves, issued a record number of fines before getting on the grey list. So what has happened since June 2022 when we were actually grey listed? Have you been doing even more fines, bigger companies?
Yeah, I mean, we had reached some fairly large regulatory settlements in 2020, and then again in early 2022, for example, the settlement with Onisac, the £850,000, which is well documented. But I think what the FATF wanted to see was a range of sanctions. So we have imposed some administrative sanctions on operators for AML breaches. We've imposed additional licensing conditions on operators. In one case, which have to remain confidential in terms of the name, we've done a banning order, for example. So I think what we were able to say to the FATF assessment team was we were less tolerant of breaches, and we were able to demonstrate that we had imposed a wider range of what they consider to be sanctions, and therefore I think that was one of the reasons, as far as gambling is concerned, that they took a positive view of what we'd done, and then obviously colleagues in other supervisory agencies had done similar work.
So which operators have you sanctioned over the last couple of years?
Well, I've mentioned the one that was already in the public domain, Onisac. Some of the other sanctions, we haven't put the names into the public domain, and therefore, again, I wouldn't want to name those operators individually.
Do you think that companies in Gibraltar that are also in the UK get fined more by the British Gambling Division?
I mean, plainly we monitor, but they're dual regulated companies. So they're looked at by us to our standards and to UK standards. The legislation doesn't vary much between the two jurisdictions. The style of approach probably varies in some respects. I mean, when an operator is fined in the UK, we generally also visit that operator and check whether or not they have reached Gibraltar standards. And obviously it's a concern to us if Gibraltar-based companies are fined in the UK, because it certainly goes towards their reputation and our reputations. More recently, if you look at the UK cases, they've been more based around social responsibility rather than AML, and the public statements in the UK have indicated that in majority of the cases, certainly in the last year or two, that there is no evidence of proceeds of crime flowing into those businesses from the UK customers. So there is a slight difference in approach as far as this is concerned, and although there have been AML breaches, the majority of those breaches in the UK have really been around social responsibility.